Hi, my name is Alex with ATech Tech Tutorials, and today I'm going to be giving you some tips and tricks on the differences between using a Scrum board and a Kanban board in Jira. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I got a lot of videos coming your way, and I have a huge backlog of videos that you might find very beneficial. Drop your support and subscribe. If you like this video, drop a like. If you have any questions about anything in the video, make sure you let me know in the comment section below. Let's jump into Jira and let me give you some tips that you might find valuable. All right, so in Jira, I'm going to be comparing two boards. I'm going to have a demo board here for Kanban. You'll notice that this is a very traditional out-of-the-box Kanban board where I have my roadmap, I have my Kanban board, and I have reports. And I'm going to be comparing that with an out-of-the-box Scrum board where you have the roadmap, the backlog, the active sprint, and reports. And so one of the first things that I want to talk about is in the world of Agile, Scrum and Kanban are pretty different. They're unique enough that they're not ever confused, if you will. But in Jira, even though, as you just saw, there are differences, I can actually configure my Kanban board to look and feel more like a traditional Scrum board. Now, there's some pros and cons, which is really what the video is about. I want to kind of show you, highlight, if you will, some of the key differences between one style over the other, and then I'll give you my recommendation. I'll give you some tips. So coming back into Jira, one of the main things that the Scrum board does out of the box is it gives you a backlog. Now, the backlog is great because the backlog allows you to essentially create a list of everything that your team needs to do, and then you're prescriptively planning sprints and like selecting items from your backlog and then moving them into your sprint. What you're also getting in your Scrum board is story points. Now, story points are going to help you estimate the complexity and sometimes the time of that specific story or task or a bug. Now, what you don't see are subtasks. So some of these issues actually have subtasks associated to them. And what you will not see those subtasks here, like subtask 3, 4, and 5. When you're in this view, the only way to see your subtasks is to actually click on the story and then show the subtask. I don't know why Atlassian does this. I haven't ever been able to find any solid documentation, but if you're from Atlassian or you know, please let me know in the comment section because I am very curious as to why can I not see my subtasks. Now you may be asking me like, Alex, why do you care? Well, because going over to this Kanban board, when I come into Kanban, I can see everything. Now at this point you're saying, Alex, well, yeah, you can see everything in the board, but there's no backlog in the Kanban board. Well, let's start talking about those tips, right? And so one of the key things that I want to talk about when we're now comparing Kanban to Scrum is I can actually make my Kanban start to look and feel more like a traditional Scrum board. And the first thing I'm going to show you here is I'm going to show you how to actually enable a backlog in the Kanban view. And so you can go to the board settings here in the top right corner, go to board settings. You can come down to columns. And if you're in this column section here, you will notice that there's this Kanban backlog. And so all you need to do is select one of your statuses from here. I'm going to select backlog because it makes the most sense. And when you do that, and I click back to board, you'll notice that all of a sudden I now have a backlog. And so you can see I'm already starting to kind of get some of the similarities between the Scrum and the Kanban. I can make them almost start looking the same. They're not exactly the same, but they're starting to look the same. And in the backlog of the Kanban, we're back to my point of if you have any subtasks, you can actually see them. Now, right now I have them taken out. And so what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to modify my filter. I had a filter here where I would intentionally take out the subtasks. I don't want to do that. So I'm actually going to remove this section here. And so this is kind of like a hidden tip. If you don't want to see your subtasks, you can actually just explicitly take them out of your board by doing the filter query there, hit save, and then the subtask should go away. Now, because I do want to see the subtask to prove my point, here is the view that I had, and you'll see it's very hard to see unless it's unless to the naked eye here, but you'll see a little arrow that signifies, hey, this story here has some subtasks. And so when I click on that, you can now see that I can see my subtasks in the backlog view. Now, when I'm back in the Scrum, you don't have that view. So I really do wish that Atlassian would have added that. I think this is a really cool feature that I really do appreciate that the Kanban board has that doesn't, that the Scrum one doesn't. So anyways, that's kind of it there. Now going back to the Kanban board, you'll notice that I have epics. Epics are on my board and stories and subtasks. And maybe you don't want your epics to show up on your board because I do firmly believe that it's not generally a good idea or a good practice to bring your epics into the board because epics are supposed to be really, really big pieces of work, which is why it's so, in Jira, you're so dependent on all those stories and the subtasks to actually drive that epic to completion. There's just a lot of variables and a lot of ambiguity that's usually associated to an epic, so I don't recommend having it on your board. Now, because Kanban boards aren't time bound, you don't have to worry about being in a sprint. You can bring in your Kanban just so that you can visualize the progress as it goes from to do to in progress and done. But I tend to like to kick it out. And so you can kick it out by going to board settings here, and you can go to columns. And this only works if you've enabled that backlog. If you've enabled the backlog, you can then enable the epics panel. And when you do the epics panel there, you'll notice my epic all of a sudden got kicked out. And now it's in the epics panel over here. Now this sometimes it's hidden, so you got to kind of turn your head sideways. It's right here. It'll show it to you. And now you can see that this starts looking and feeling a whole lot more like the Scrum board. The only key difference is at this point is that the Kanban board doesn't give you the ability to put story points. And most importantly, you don't name a sprint. You just select from your backlog what item is going to be in your to-do, which then brings it into the board view. So now you can see that these boards start behaving very similarly. So now we're at the question as to, so which one's the right one for you then? So my recommendation is, if you're completely new to Agile, I recommend you come in through the Kanban route. As you can see, I can configure Kanbans to look and feel very much like a Scrum board without the commitment of the story points, without the time boxing of your sprints. Kanban is going to be just a really good, just a first step. And you can see that even if you're not even ready to have epics and you're not ready to have backlogs and you just want to just get started and you know you want to be Agile, but you're just not quite there yet, the out-of-the-box Kanban is going to be that very, very first like good step zero. And as your team matures, as you start finding the limitations of the vanilla Kanban, you can now start adding these backlog features and you can do the epics panel. And then once you're ready, because you're still in the same project, you don't actually have to get out of the project to then switch over to Kanban. You will not, however, let me make this very clear, you will not be able to convert your board from a Kanban to a Scrum, but because the issues live in the project, as long as the filters are exactly the same for a Kanban board or a Scrum board, you will be able to essentially create a new board that is of the type Scrum, and then it'll look and behave like a traditional Scrum board where you will have your sprints, you will have your story points, it'll give you the capacities, it'll give you everything else you're used to. But it's a really great way to kind of slowly ease that transition. So those are some of my tips and tricks to kind of help you compare and understand and contrast Kanban boards versus Scrum boards, because again, in just taking a step back, looking at the world of Agile, they're two different methods, but in Jira, you can see that if you know how to configure it just right, which now you do because you watched this video of mine, you can actually do a whole lot in the Kanban style that you wouldn't do in the Scrum. Now, the last thing here to close this video off are reports. So when you are in a Jira Scrum board, you will get metrics and reports that are appropriate to Kanban. When you're in the Scrum board, you're going to get your more traditional like burn downs, burn ups, sprint reports, things like that. So if reporting is really, really key, then you're obviously going to want to go Scrum. But again, I just wanted to give you this video so you can really understand that the differences are subtle. There are obviously some major differences like the reports, but for the most part, just for teams that are just starting out, the differences might not be as extreme as you think. So anyways, that's going to be it for this video. If you found any value out of this video, please drop a like. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider subscribing. It really, really does help the channel out quite a bit. And if you have any questions or comments or concerns, let me know in the comment section. I'd love to know, what kind of board do you have? Let me know in the comments. I am really curious. Are you on Team Kanban or Team Scrum? Which one's working out for you? Let me know. Let's get a conversation going in the chat or in the comment section below. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next one.